Here's the game plan for managing yourself this Christmas. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to the Tiffany Micah podcast. What we do here is build the strength and courage in you to accomplish your big dreams and goals in your sport. No longer will you feel limited. You won't feel you're not good enough. You won't question whether you will make it. Those doubts will disappear because you will have the competitive edge over your opponents and leave them in your wake. And the bonus is others will notice. Listen up and take notes because I will show you exactly how to do it. Hey there, this is Tiff from the Tiffany Micah podcast and welcome to today's episode. Yep, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to have a game plan on how we can actually manage ourselves throughout Christmas. Okay, because so easy to get distracted, so easy for other things to just appear from nowhere. So we want to make sure that we're really having a plan in place, a really simple plan. So the last 2 weeks, I've actually given you a heads up of I wanted you to be really focusing on accomplishing your goals or what was left. And this is really the last week, isn't it? And the reason for that is because it's Christmas. And then what happens after Christmas becomes New Year. And I can't stress enough to you about it's really time to have a break. And I want you to have a break because if you don't, you really won't be ready to take on next year. It's going to be too hard for you because you're going to be tired. Right, we're coming to the end of the year. There's a lot of things that have happened. I don't want you to be worn out and I don't want you to be tired, okay? I want you to be fresh and ready to take on next year. And some high performers will tell you to keep going through. You've got to keep pushing through. You've got to keep going. And you know what? I really don't agree. Because you cannot perform at your best when you're burnt out and exhausted. And plus, not only being burnt out and exhausted, there's a high chance that you'll actually get injured. So we want to prevent that actually happening. So what's the point? Well, the point is really it's about having a game plan in place of how to manage yourself correctly. So what we want to do here is we want to have rest periods, we want to have that break and recovery periods because they are just as important as competition tournaments and training. So why are we talking about managing yourself correctly? Because you know what? It's not easy to do. And I'll tell you, I'm a prime example of really struggling to manage myself correctly over the years, getting much better at it. And I thought, well, you know, I'm constantly working on improving me in order to set the example for you. So these are the things that I'm going to be sharing with you very shortly. But I'll tell you one thing, it's easy to keep pushing. And that thought in the back of my mind's there, it's like, oh yeah, next week I'm going to take some time off. I'm not actually going to be doing any teaching for golf. I'm going to take the week after that off as well. I'm going to have 2 weeks. Oh, there's all these things that I can do. There's all these things that I can put in place, and I've got all the days to do that. It's easy to keep on doing. It's easy to keep doing the actions because you're like, oh yeah, I've got a break. I can do this, and I can just completely focus on that. And the answer for us is we always want to make sure that we're accomplishing. And yes, we've got to be taking action. But we also need to be aware that breaks, rest periods, recovery periods are just as important. So when I say about a rest period, when I talk about a rest period or a break, I don't mean that you just lay on the bed and you sleep or you play with your phone, whatever it is. What I really mean here is really when you take a break or a rest period, what I mean is that just get out of your normal routine. Do some things different. Because that's what I have to make sure that I do. Because I'm the same. I'm a high performer as well. I keep going and going and going. It's been so heavily focused on doing things this year that I get highly rigid in routines. But you know what? This is a time to have some fun. This is a time to go and explore. This is the time to go and do things that you wouldn't normally try, wouldn't normally do. Like I was talking about in the previous episode, I said about, what's your big audacious goal for coming up for this Christmas? And I said to go and do something completely different than what you'd normally do. I was talking about setting how I'm going to play as many holes as I can playing golf, because I don't really get the opportunity to play as much golf as I'd like to at the moment. And play as many holes as I can between 6 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening. I go and do something different. And I want you to go and do something that's active. But I want you to do something that's just out of the norm. But I want you to come up with, during this holiday period, I want you to come up with some, in that break time, I don't want you to stick to a routine. I really want you to get out of the norm, okay? We've got to get out of that. We've got to have that break. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to get out of the norm? Well, here's game plan number 1. So number 1 is I want you to decide how much time off or break time that you'll have. You may only be able to have a short break, maybe 3 or 5 days, maybe one, or you might be lucky enough to have 1 to 2 weeks, or maybe you might have a bit more. Whatever it is, decide exactly how much break time that you will have, because that's always a big thing that I don't do unless I actually go away on a holiday. But because we're actually staying in Sydney this year, I've got to make sure that I make that break time, because it'll be so easy to fall back into a routine. Number 2, set some fun activities you'd like to do. And I want you to make a list. What are some really fun activities that you'd really like to do? Make that list. Number 3, and then I want you to decide on what days you're actually going to go and do those fun activities. So my biggest thing is this fun activity that I want to do, this big audacious goal actually for this Christmas, is I've just got to figure out the day that I want to go and play golf all day. With no concerns in the world. I don't have to worry about anyone. I'm going to go and do it by myself. I don't need anyone around me. But I've got to work out what that day is. So what I want you to do is I want you to work out what you're going to do on, what fun activities you're going to do on those days. Number 4, what days will you do some light training? And what I mean is just do something physical. Okay, because if you go from one extreme to the other, then it's just so much harder to come back. And I always find that when I take holidays, I always make sure that I continue some form of fitness, because it's just so much harder to come back. So we want to make sure that even though you're having a break from your training and everything, do something light, just to keep a bit of maintenance in there. And number 5, what days will you plan nothing and see what the day brings? So that's good too. Go in with an agenda of having nothing, and then just wake up in the morning and just figure out what you do on the day, okay? So these are just a few questions to ask yourself and to prepare for. But I really want you to do me a favor. I really want you to take some time out. That's incredibly important. And the big thing, the big bonus is that you will mentally, not only physically benefit from it, but you will mentally benefit from it. So there's things that I'm taking a break from as of recording this episode for you, is I'm no longer going to set outcomes for the day, for the next 2 weeks, over the Christmas and first week in January. I'm no longer going to be, I'll still be training every day because I love that. That's my thing. But I'm actually going to go to the gym more and longer because I'm not going to have any time restraints. Again, that's something that I love to do. I reckon it'd be pretty cool, actually, to go and hang out at the gym all day and just do training all day. For me, I'd love to do that. That'd be something I'd love to do. But if you're an athlete, full-time athlete, it's probably something not to do, and go and do something completely different. Okay, go and learn something new that you've never learnt before and that you've wanted to learn. So this is the part one of how we're going to manage ourselves over Christmas, our game plan. Now, that's our break time. But what about food? As you know, as an athlete, as a high performer, we become obsessed with things. And especially as an athlete, we become really obsessed with food because we need to ensure that we're fueling our bodies the right way so that we can get the best performance out of our bodies possible, don't we? Because as a high performer, we do get obsessed about things because we want to accomplish, don't we? But when we obsess about food, what happens is it can really dominate our thoughts. And at Christmas time, there's going to be a lot of yummy foods around. There's going to be parties to go to. And there's going to be so many temptations. Now, for me, I'm not sure about you, but my thing is especially around the sweet foods. There's going to be so many temptations because people buy me a lot of chocolates and lollies and gingerbread, and I love all of that. That's my sweet tooth coming out. But it's learning to manage it. So how I want you to approach it this Christmas, and any time when, big events like this come up, rather than obsessing over what you shouldn't eat, and obsessing over those foods, and then you do eat it, and then you feel incredibly guilty. You know what? What I want you to do is I want you to be okay with it. It's okay to eat those foods. I don't want you to feel guilty about it because you've worked hard, you've looked after your body, you've fueled your body the right way. Again, this is break time. Have a break. And I want you to enjoy it. You go to a party, got yummy foods that you really like that you don't normally eat it. Okay? Find the pleasure in it. Enjoy it. Do not feel guilty. Do not give yourself a hard time. It's all right. It's all right to do that. Give yourself permission to eat yummy foods like that. Because if you're like me, I love healthy food. You're probably the same because you're looking after yourself. But you know what? It's great too to have some Christmas food. It's okay to have some sweet food. It's okay to have some savoury food with a bit of fat in it. It's all okay. So we want to enjoy. So the thing that I want you to get across, the thing that I want to get across to you is to make sure you just enjoy it. But the secret, now this is the big secret. Shh, don't tell anyone. But the big secret is how to manage it. And I feel as though I've, cracked the code. And I've cracked the code on how to manage around Christmas food, party food, birthday food, all those types of temptations that we get drawn in by. I really believe I've cracked the code. You want to know what the code is? I'll tell you in a minute. So before I tell you what the code is, people think it's okay to allow themselves to let go and eat as much food as they can, overload their bodies with food, put on weight. Some people put on, 5 kilos. I think that's probably around 10 pounds or a bit more, 12 pounds. And they go, oh no, I'll worry about it. I'll worry about it in the new year. When I set my New Year's resolutions, when I set my goals, I'll worry about it then. But the problem is that if you let yourself go, then you become sluggish. It's much harder to come back, and it becomes a real issue for you, right? Then you get into that obsessiveness about it again. But what if you knew what the code was and you knew how to manage it? Wouldn't become an issue, would it? No, it wouldn't. So what's the code? I know you're going, Tiff, come on, tell me, what's the code? Okay, intermittent fasting is the answer. Okay, that's the code. And I'll be talking more about intermittent fasting early next year, because we want to make sure that that's going to be part of our game plan for when we're setting our goals and so on. Because by doing intermittent fasting, you can actually perform so much better. So if you're not doing it already, here's something that you can try over this Christmas period, because I'll show you and share with you how to manage yourself better over Christmas, so that we have a game plan in place, okay? So let's look at it this way. When you go out, and perhaps you may be going out quite a bit at the moment. You know, it is that time of year. We get invited out to lots of dinners, lots of parties. We tend to eat high sugar foods. Not sure about you, but I do. I tend to eat a lot more high sugar foods, high fat foods. But we need to have, like I said, that game plan in place. How are we going to manage that? So how do we do that? And I know that you're going, come on, Tiff, just give me the plan. Give me the plan. Okay. Let me give you an example, and then we'll put the plan in place, okay? So let's say you're invited out to a few parties. Let's say Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. Three parties in a row. There's going to be lots of temptation there with food. You may drink alcohol. I actually don't drink alcohol. I'm not a big fan of that, simply because I don't like the way it makes me feel. Makes me feel sluggish the next day. So I don't do that. But you may. So don't feel guilty if you have a drink, you know, a beer or cocktail or whatever it is that you have. Don't feel guilty by that. I'm just sharing that I don't do that. So you've got these parties that you're going to go to over these next 3 nights. But the thing is that we need to have that game plan in place of how to manage that. So let's say, for example, that you finish eating and you finish drinking around 10 p.m. Now, if you finish drinking and eating around that 10 p.m., what we want to do then is we want to give ourselves a 16-hour window before you eat again. Because what happens is the body, after that 12-hour period, starts to break down proteins and fats and sugars in the body. Now, I'm not a nutrition expert, but that's just the general idea of what starts to happen. So after that 12-hour period, between that 12 and 16 hours, so we've got that 4 hours, that's when all the fasting that we do, really the body starts to benefit. So what we want to do between that period of 10 p.m. at night and then 16 hours later up until 2 p.m. the next day, we want to be flushing out the foods out of our body with drinking lots of water. So just drink lots and lots of water. If you're finding that you can't do that, take a bite of an apple. Like once you get up, especially after the 12-hour period, if you find that you struggle between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. the next day, just take a bite of an apple every hour for that next 4 hours while drinking lots of water. Because it's just an easy way to manage yourself. And then at 2 p.m., have something light, have something like a protein shake, and then follow it up by drinking lots of water up until you're ready to go out again. So what you've then done is you've settled yourself down, you've allowed some recovery time for your body, ready for the next night. So I want you to be thinking about this rather than overloading your body the next day by, I've got to have breakfast, I've got to put lots of protein in my body, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. rather than overloading it, let's do the opposite and let's have a light intake throughout that day. And I'll tell you that it does work. If you haven't been doing this type of method, it is incredibly powerful. I've been doing it for quite some time because I test lots of different things out to see how my body responds and so on. Because I'm getting older, I make sure that I'm really more diligent because I want to live forever. Who doesn't, right? I want to live forever, and I want to be in the state that I'm in now, mentally, physically, feeling fantastic. So I want to maintain that and continue that on. So we've got to make sure that we figure out ways in which that we can test things that are going to work for us. So intermittent fasting works quite well. So especially over the Christmas period, we want to make sure that we're really managing ourselves correctly. Okay, and I've found that that's the best way because I've been out to quite a few dinners, quite a few parties, temptations of a lot of food, a lot of sweet food because I am very much drawn. I like to have some savoury foods and then finish off with sweet foods because that's the way I like it, and I do love sweets and because I've been given so many chocolates and lollies and so on over the last few weeks, there's lots of temptations there. But we need to make sure that we've got that game plan in place, haven't we? So think about over this Christmas period how you're going to manage yourself better with regards to food. Give yourself that window, because when you give yourself that window, then you're able to manage it so much better. Your body's able to get into some recovery and ready to approach the next day. And you know what? That next party that you go to, you may not overload it so much. You may find that you may not want to do that. I find that some days, because my body feels a little bit too overloaded, when we go to the next event, take it a bit easier. And that's good. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to manage ourselves, okay? So you've got 2 game plans, haven't you? So the first part of the game plan is to make sure that you take a break. The second part of the game plan is just managing yourself around that yummy Christmas food and all those parties that you're going to go to. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed what you heard today. Love it if you could leave a comment where you hear this episode, what you like best, what you're going to put in place. And I want you to dream big, believe in you, and go after your dreams. Have an awesome day. Take care. Talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet downloaded the #1 deadly mistake athletes make sure you go to tiffany-micah.com and download the #1 deadly mistake athletes make. Share with me what you like best about what you heard in the comments section wherever you hear this episode. Share with your friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, and please leave a 5-star review wherever you hear these episodes. I would really appreciate it. Dream big, believe in you, go after your dreams. Have an absolutely awesome day.